Caitanya Charitamrita, Sri Radhananda Ki Jai, Krishna Guru Ki Jai, Sri Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Sri Deva Swami Maharaj Ki Jai, Sri Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai, Vinod Parivar Ki Jai. So good evening, everyone. Continuing our reading from Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. And we are now in the midst of the initial response of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the questions of Prabhupada Saraswati that are constitute a kind of a voice arising from the teachable moment created by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Aishwarya, combined with his humility. And what he has is in the midst of saying, replying to the sannyasin and his constituents with regards to their inquiry about why you chant and dance, why don't you do the sannyas dharma and so forth, as we heard last night. He explained, my Guru Maharaj told me I'm not qualified for that. I'm all qualified for the Gopal mantra, Krishna mantra only, which of course is found in the Upanishads. As I said, one of the books they missed, perhaps, in their study. And so he is continuing to explain what his Guru Maharaj told him, and that all about the efficacy of chanting both Krishna mantra and Krishna Nam. So tonight he says, Nam vinu kale, Nam vinu kale, nahi ad dharma, sarvamantra sarma nam, e shastra marma. So without Nam vinu, Kali, in the time of Kali, nahi ad dharma, there's no dharma. Sarvamantra sarnam, the essence of all mantras is Nam. Ishastra Marma, this is the opinion of the scriptures. A couple of things perhaps to draw from this. Of course, he's speaking about the time, the quality of the time of Kali Yuga, and regardless of what, and when we think about that in the modern time, this is now the standard of knowledge of his time that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking from Shastra to someone who accepts it as such as well. So this is the scriptural debate. What does the scripture say? Whether or not the scriptures are going to govern your life and be considered the source of all knowledge, that's another subject, perhaps. But in the context of this discussion, Mahaprabhu was speaking, and he will speak clearly now as he goes forward from the sacred texts that again are the standard body of knowledge for Pratishananda Saraswati and for all thoughtful people of the time. They had a sense, of course, that comprehensive knowing could be arrived at only by revelation. Not that logic or reason didn't have its place, but it had its place in relation to revelation. And independent of that, it would be ultimately circular and not allow one to arrive at any understanding of real standing, or a comprehensive knowledge by which one could be fulfilled and feel that there's nothing left to be known. I know what needs to be known, and it's me, what I am, and that, of course, in relation to my source, if we arrive at that, as we must, in the context of bhakti. So, this is a general idea, revelation, that reality is alive, and ultimate reality wants us to know about it itself. It will make itself known, and this is one of the mediums. Through the sacred texts, the Vedas are thought to be not compiled by any particular person originally. They were sounds. Eventually, obviously, in time, they were compiled into literary form, but the idea is that the sounds somehow transcend human invention. As I said last night, in a similar way that Penrose posits, the physicist that I mentioned last night, mathematical equations, or sophisticated mathematical equations that so precisely describe the underlying physical reality of quarks and gluons and so on and so forth, and protons and electrons and so forth, transcend thought, mind, and the physical world. So it is thought that there, and in saying that, of course, he makes the point, and I think I raised it last night, that this implies this idea that there are mathematical equations that correspond with the substratum and underlying nature of the physical world. This implies that they are unto themselves, the world is coming out of that, it's an approximation of that, and that there is an objective standard of ultimate knowing. In other words, it's not just what you think it is. There's a lot of talk like this these days, the anti-guru type of, approach, be your own guru, whatever the books mean to you, find out what they mean to you, for what you feel they are, and you have your own enlightenment, which is a totally subjective affair, an idea that flies in the face of the experience and testimony of all mystics in all cultures for all time, really. They all speak about the nature of enlightenment in such a way that if we look at it, it's easy to see that they're talking basically about the same thing. While there are nuances in terms of the way Rumi speaks about it, or Jesus speaks about it, or the Buddha speaks about it, or Caitanya Mahaprabhu speaks about it, there is so much common ground. It's all ego-effacing. They all speak about, even Buddhism, something more than the physical. Buddhists, for example, acknowledge a mental, subtle world. And some say that Buddhists also, if we look carefully at him, he acknowledges a transcendent reality, consciousness as well, and his no self type of preaching is more of a vehicle or more of a preaching strategy than it is a statement about an ontological truth. He says there's no self, referring to the false self in this version of Buddhism, but he's not saying that there is no consciousness, if you will, self that transcends the mind. But thought that, let's start with this. There's no dismantle the false self. At any rate, there is so much common ground. I mean, Buddha says, for example, that the suffering of the world arises out of the thirst for it. This is right out of the Bhagavad Gita. So this kind of basic level of common ground speaks to us about an objective standard of what enlightenment is. It's not up to us just to choose and figure out in a humanistic way, just be all that you are as a human. Use the text to speak to you about your humanness and come up with what it means to be enlightened. And for you, it's one thing. For someone else, it's something else. This is very, whatever, you do what you want, but this is very different, I'm saying, from thousands of years of people whose lives have influenced and will continue to influence the world for a long, long time. People who have gone against the current of the world and are better for it and have made others better for it. The Jesuses, the Buddhas, the Rumis, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in our tradition and so forth. And these are powerful and really arguably
moral life comes from these kinds of people. You can dismiss them now. We don't need religion for morality. And say that at the very but actually morality arises in the context of believing in the fact that there's meaning to life and purpose, and there's an objective standard of goodness, of beauty that transcends cultural differences, and so on and so forth, and knowing ultimate reality. So this is the Vedas. The idea of the Vedic sounds is a similar idea, and they had to be chanted in certain ways by expert people, and they had and action and formations and whatnot, influences obviously correspond with them. For all motion is accompanied by sound. There's no motion that's not accompanied by or driven, for that matter, you can say, by sound. We can't hear all the sounds. We have a certain level that we can hear, but all the movements of the ants, the insects, the mammals, the waves in the ocean, everything. The way that the atoms, electrons moving, they make a sound. So with things act, I guess I want to say. So for every dance, there's a song. And therefore you get these theoretical physicists positing ideas like string theory that poetically are spoken about as if they're talking about the concert going on in the mind of God, something like that, vibrations. So the Vedic mantras are somehow thought like that, that the world comes out of them. Kind of like they would out of a mathematical equation. Now you'd have a hard time saying, this mantra it means E equals MC squared or something like that. But it's just a kind of a concept. I want to speak about it in that way, for the sake of making the point that that according to the sacred texts of the Hindus, there is an objective standard of knowledge, what it means to know. An objective standard of beauty, an objective standard of morality. It's not that moral laws are fixed for all time and place, but there's some objective standard of good and bad nonetheless. And so here, Mahaprabhu and Prakasananda, they accept this principle. And so, and one of them is doing the so-called sannyas dharma of just studying the scriptures. That's what he does. And so Mahaprabhu is answering these questions based on the scripture. So referring to the sacred texts, he gives his answer. Now we may dismiss the sacred text and think we've got better books now, better ideas, and so forth. And that philosophy has become, for centuries in the West, unhinged from as it was hinged to the Western revelation of the Bible and so on and so forth. But of course, plenty of people think we're not better off, and philosophy has come up, well, it's running on empty. Western philosophical enterprise is out of gas. A good number of people, thoughtful people, have heard such an opinion. Alfred North Whitehead said, how literally he meant it, of course, is a question, but that all modern philosophy, Western philosophy, is but a footnote to Plato. And when we mention Plato, the father of modern Western philosophy, last that in terms of his Platonic world, which is a world beyond mind, beyond physical, where, for example, there is an ultimate good, ultimate beauty, that this is, here we experience an approximation of, and an ultimate truth, a logic, sense, math is logic. So Mahaprabhu's idea, as we can see, which is the idea of the scriptures that he's speaking to Prakasananda about, is that that sound, the sound of Nam, the sound of the name, the logos, Logos means name, and it also means logic. Right? So, go to the professor. But there's the implication is that what's in a name, as we say, there's a lot of that. So the position of the Veda, as Mahaprabhu was explaining here, the sacred text, which Prakashananda is so bent on saying that sannyasis should study, is that one sound, if knowing it comprehensively, you know everything in the Veda. And that sound is the sound of the name of God. And which name? Of course, he's already mentioned Krishna mantra, Krishna nam. So the name of Krishna. That may sound sectarian, but it's really a question of understanding the implication of the name, and for that matter, the Godhead, Krishna. That name is thought to be the most complete nomenclature for the Absolute. And he has different names as well. And so different functions, different ways of looking at him, or by which he reveals himself, and thus is known. As Brahman's Paramatma, indirect names as we think of them, and your primary names, secondary names, and your primary names, like Govinda, Krishna, Narayan, and so on and so forth. But this is a whole, what Mahaprabhu is coming forth with here is a whole dharma of the name. He says, Vinu nahi nam. Without nam, there is what? Nahi adharma. In Kali, especially in this time, there is no dharma. He says. And nam is the essence of all mantras. And this is the opinion of the sacred texts themselves, opinion of the Shastra. So he's making a point to Prakashananda, and it's an interesting point. It's not a point that is, while it may start to sound sectarian, which is Krishna nam and only Krishna nam, he'll cite a verse to that effect, and so on. So we have to understand the implication of Krishna nam and the person of Krishna also. How that is describing it's a very inclusive sense of the Godhead. One of our brothers, Gorkesha, recently wrote something that His Grace Dulal Chandra was sent me, in which he characterized accurately, I believe, Eastern religious traditions to be, in a general sense, by their nature, inclusive, and the Western Abrahamic religions to be exclusive, even amongst themselves. The Quran over the Bible, over the Torah, and Christians against the Jews, sometimes for killing Christ, and Muslims against the Christians for thinking that Christ is God and not a prophet, and not recognizing the more recent prophet Muhammad. So they're at odds with themselves, and of course with the Eastern tradition. Well, with the Eastern tradition, like Buddhism, even Jainism, and Hinduism in particular, I think more so than anything, Hinduism tends to be inclusive. It's very variegated within itself. You do have some variegation within Christianity, but at any rate, it's very inclusive. Hinduism. And as we go up, as we would think of it, ladder to Krishna, the full-fledged, in the language of Sridhar Maharaj, theistic conception of Krishna, see, it's a very inclusive conception. He's Rasaraj. All the feelings are in him. We look at it from the feeling perspective, because he has the capacity to have all feelings, all loving feelings. We could conclude he's the most complete form of the Godhead, who is, well, the lovable object, right? So, who has the capacity to reciprocate in all forms of love. This is a simple kind of argument. Of course, the Goswamis make it in a very sophisticated way from a scriptural point of view, and from a reasonable, logical point of view, when the scripture is your standard base of knowledge. Now we have the problem in the modern world of scripture, we would say, The scripture is not the standard base of knowledge, so we have to speak about it in other ways to make a point such that hopefully these sacred texts could have more credence, they'd be more believable in the eyes of the people. Prabhupada this is a very prominent emphasis in the preaching of Prabhupada. Sacred text, revelation, this principle. It's easy to misunderstand and make small of in modern times, but it's actually a very deep point. I often put it like this: if you want to know comprehensive knowing, perfect knowledge, which everyone knows, whether they say it or not, by which we'll be able to have actions so perfectly informed that they make us perfectly happy. Then we have to get that perfect knowledge, we have to have a perfect method for knowing. And the perfect method of knowing is not going to arise from within our present admitted, acknowledged state of imperfection. This is a beautiful point of Sridhar, therefore the necessity of intervention. Call it the Guru, call it Shastra, these are forms of revelation. From within imperfection, perfection is not going to come. And from within perfection, imperfection is not going to come. That point you should understand. From within perfection, imperfection is not going to come. That is a contradiction. Therefore, there's no falling from within. That's impossible. This is the math of it here. Very simple. With it from perfection, by its very nature, imperfection will not arise. And imperfection, by its very nature, requires perfection, ingress of perfection, in order for it to overcome itself, so to speak, if you will. So this is some of the basic logic behind the principle of revelation. And of course, these sacred texts, the oldest of which is in the world is the Rig Veda, are difficult to understand in our modern times, which we say is referred to as the Kali Yuga. Difficult to understand. So you need a succession, a Guru Parampara to understand it, to keep it alive, so to speak. And it's in an ancient language that's, for example, Sanskrit. Difficult to access and understand. So you have this chain of succession, masters, teachers, to keep it alive and relevant, and so on. And this is not going to go away. These ideas are always going to find some place in minds of thoughtful and earnest people who want to really better themselves in a comprehensive sense and weigh in on the very essential issues. What is it that's out there, and what is it that I am in here? This is what's about. What's out there and what's in here? What's being viewed and what is the viewer? What is the nature of that which is experienced? And what is the nature of the experiencer? I mean, these are the questions of human life that are not to be put off for this, that, and the other concern. This, that, and the other concern may have their place relatively to some extent. These are the real pressing human questions that really differentiate us from other species of life that don't have the capacity to ask them. And these texts have an opinion about that, a strong opinion about that. And they have a track record also. I mean, those we in our tradition and other traditions will have a track record of persons who apply themselves in relation to those texts, and they have cross-culturally encountered, experienced a sense of knowing that results in a kind of contentedness and lack of any necessity to take, to exploit, that rises to the point of a compassionate giving, caring, that includes all things, the whole world, the animate, the inanimate, the mammals, the insects, the reptiles, the, what do you call them? Birds. That's a fancy name too, I think. But the humans, a universal kind of compassion. Of course, because in our perspective, from our perspective, this is only the beginning, universal compassion, and we go up there and enter into rasa and so forth. But this is a common denominator amongst the mystics in different traditions and so forth. And these are powerful, influential people that stand as, like I say, like lighthouses on the shore in the dark night, for us adrift in the ocean. There is shore, there is land to be had. So Mahaprabhu is going to give an argument from the scripture. I just want to kind of put it a little bit in perspective. Because without a kind of perspective, it can start to sound a little narrow, and just Krishna, and this is the only way, and so on and so forth. Basically, he's speaking about Nam Dharma, he's speaking about sound, the efficacy of sound, and the logo of the divine name, the sound that by sound, everything's happening. All motion is accompanied by sound, as I say. So the world, the perspective of the world comes into being by sound, and the world as we know it, of samsara, can be ended by sound. And that sound is Krishna. There may be other sounds also that may do so to some extent, but this does it in a very comprehensive way by causing us to move and under the influence of that sound, beyond the stillness that retires the misguided movement of this world. So beyond the stillness that often transcendentalists seek to attain, there's movement, the dance, the lila, in other words. He's advocating this sound. And this again is the sound that's giving rise to the not material, but the spiritual emotions that he's experiencing. And while they have, you want to hear about that a little bit here, while they have a correspondence with material emotions, if you get fearful, your hairs may stand on end. And sadness, you may cry, or in joy, you may cry, so on and so forth. When anger arises, your complexion, you change colors. Your face may get flushed and red, and so forth. So these are common experiences. The astasattvika vikara, the common experiences, involuntary transformations arising out of material emotions. But what Mahaprabhu was experiencing these in a very extreme way, and the cause of them is bhakti rasa, arising out of bhakti rasa. An emotional life centered on one sound, one name, which is of course non-different than the named, Krishna. And here he is, a sannyasi, supposed to be a sober person. And he's swooning and dancing, and weeping, wailing and singing, accompanied by musical instruments of life of transcendental motion. That's the world beyond the physical, beyond the mental, and platonic Golok, and Golokeru Premadam, Harinam Sankirtan. He said this Nam comes from there. It's exported from there. Nartan is beautifully sung. Golokeru Premadam, the wealth of Golok is coming to us through Nam Sankirtan. Through Nam Sankirtan, we can gain that wealth. We can become members there in the world of emotion and feeling and love proper, rather than in this approximation of it that constitutes physical transformations of tears, facial muscles, heartbeats, and so forth, and transcends the emotional side of smiles, laughs, tears, loves, and so forth, arising out of the approximation of consciousness being focused, as we said last night, on matter. So this world of transcendent emotions, well, it is what it is. It's transcendent. It transcends the mental. It transcends the physical. And the idea, Mahaprabhu was saying, this is the extraordinary power of Nam, Krishna Nam. This is what my Guru told me. He gave me Krishna mantra, and he gave me Krishna Nam. And he taught me what the efficacy of both was. And now we'll hear his testimony. And his testimony is important. Because we can talk till we're blue in the face about old books and how Shastra and Revelation and all these things, but there's no example. It'll be difficult to capture our faith. It's important that the moment of Caitanya Mahaprabhu in the world has been captured by Krishnadas Kaviraj Swami and other eternal associates of his, as they're described, with a number of quite a body, I should say, of literary contributions to Chaitanya Bhagavad, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Chandravara, Chaitanya Mahakavya. There's probably a dozen of them, and the more philosophical works of the Goswamis speaking about what are all these transformations? What is this embodiment of ecstasy, that the likes of which the world has never seen, material or spiritually? This is the historical fact of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You can try to dismiss it and call it something else. As I said, they call it sometimes, some of the original Orientalists, they call it, well, he looked like this Chaitanya was an epileptic. He was prone to fits and passing out and so on and so forth. But as we know, they often said epilepsy is not contagious. And it doesn't arise from chanting Krishna Nam. And meanwhile, we don't need to refer to some modern idea of a diseased condition to describe this. We have the sacred texts that talk about such things. This is what Radha is experiencing. This is what Radha is. Mahabhav Swarupini. And we talked a little bit about the philosophical necessity of a Radha, the logical necessity, the logic of this, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, if it's in the text and it says do this, and you'll experience it, and someone does it and they experience it on the embodiment of it, well, that's our science for you. There you go. I mean, science is everything. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. Everybody makes experiments, gets data, and makes conclusions. Touch fire, it burned. You try it. Burnt me too. Okay. We got consistent data, fire burns. We got a law, there we go. So this is something everybody does. You can hone it, and you can arrive at a certain kind of knowledge by this. That's a fact. But you can know everything? No, that's not possible. And that by you become perfectly happy, of course, that is the myth of modern science. This is the myth that by modern science we will arise out of the hell of human imperfection and then enter into the heaven of robotic perfection. And our reply is no thanks. I'm not really interested in having a chip implanted in my head to perfect myself in some very crude material sense. of how I can function, even if that includes being the nicest, most polite guy, most psychologically balanced, nice person. That's not enough to meet the necessity of a transcendentalist who has a sense, the feeling that there's more to life than that. And that's what the text talked about. We want that more. We think that more is at the heart of reality. And that there's a trans-rational way of arriving at it. Call it mystical, fine, no problem. What is life without mystery? If your science of modern day aim is to take the mystery out of life, again, we don't, no thank you. We're not interested in that. There's a way, a modern idea, a very condescending way of looking at transcendentalists sometimes, or religious people, more so perhaps, by saying, you know, hey, we don't believe in magic. No thanks. Magical thinking. You know, we're logical, reasonable people. No, we have to ask, is it logical and is it reasonable to think, and I've said this before, that the physical reality will organize itself in some way, in a measure of complexity, that at some point it will start talking to you. Start feeling, start experiencing. That, to me, is magical thinking. The basic ingredients of this table are the same thing that my brain is made out of. There's nothing missing there. The same basic physical ingredients. Is it? Anyway, it's matter. And so to think that it will organize itself in some way, that it'll start to be experienced, I think that's very magical thinking. And to think that there is something that transcends the physical, that there's mind, and beyond that, that there's consciousness. That'll be appealing to some, that'll be reasonable to some. And it places before us a wonderful prospect of attainment in the hereafter and in the now that will also make us a really nice person, kind and compassionate, good person, and so on and so forth. So there's anyway some reason, some logos, some logic to the idea of embracing the divine logos as a comprehensive approach to knowing. And this is what Mahaprabhu was advocating here in the texts, and enlightening the Prakashananda Saraswati about what the Vedas say. We're a big Vedantavit, but we don't know Vedavid Chaham. Krishna says that I'm the knower of the Vedanta. Vedanta comes from me. By knowing me, in Krishna, you get all Vedanta. And I'm not different from my name. And so, so Mahaprabhu is about, and the point I'm making is he personifies what's being talked about in the text. You may not experience it, you may have little experience, but that certainly would be helpful. But if you have someone who is an example of what the texts are talking about, and the Goswamis have shown that the ecstasy of Mahaprabhu is what these texts are talking about, and what that corresponds to. So we don't need to defer to some other idea, epilepsy. We don't have another idea in our worldview. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya saw Chaitanya Dev, the Mahaprabhu, the 24-year-old lad, the great master, falling on the floor of the temple before Jagannath, and having fainted in a swoon, not because he needed some medication, but because he saw Jagannath. And what did he see when he saw the big eyes of Jagannath with no eyelids, that never blinked? He saw his eyes are like that, big, bright, and open, and wide, and looking for Radha. And there's no blinking in that looking. And when he saw Jagannath, big, big lotus eyes, what else did he see? He saw he had a flute and a peacock feather. Now, you can look at Jagannath, you don't see that. This is what Mahaprabhu saw. In the Lord of the universe, Jagannath, he saw Krishna. And he's passed out in the swoon because he realized he's looking for me and I'm around it. Something like this. He passed out. His dancing in the Ratha Yatra, the Jagannath is moving accordingly. When Mahaprabhu stopped, nothing could make the chariot go forward, even elephants behind it. This is the testimony of Swarup, Damodar Swarup, Raghunath Das. They saw this. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped his dancing, or when he stood and danced in one place, the Jagannath's cart stood still. And even elephants pushing behind the cart, could not move it. And when he began to proceed with his dancing on down the golden road of opportunity, heading to Vrindavan, then Jagannath rolled on. It's an incredible testimony. What is the spiritual emotion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? When Sarvabhauma, when he saw the boy lying on the ground, and the guards were Pujari ready to beat him, you can't roll him around like this before Jagannath. But they were stopped, and immediately or shortly, out of a sense of emergency, Bhattacharya Sarvabhauma arrived. And he was, who was he? He was a Bhattacharya Sarvabhauma. He was very well schooled in the sacred texts. He used to teach sannyasis, young sannyasis, the Nyaya, the logic of the Vedanta. Yeah, Vedanta has some logic to it. It's the math. It's the mathematical equations, if you will, that can free you from lust, greed, and the logic of that, and these troublesome conditions that are the opposite of being a giver, that constitute being a taker. And you want to find enlightenment in the context of that. You're looking in the wrong place. But he knew the scripture. So when he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he examined him. He took a swab and put it near his nose and saw he's alive. And then he recognized Kampashru Pulakadaya. He having all these astaseptic vikar, transformations. Like when you get scared, the hair stand on end, like I said. When you get sad or joyful, you may cry, and so on. You get anger, the complexion may change colors. Well, all this is happening at once. And in extreme measure. And so he shooed everybody away, bring him to my house. Bring this body, embodiment of ecstasy to my house that corresponds with what the sacred texts talk about, that you never see anywhere. It's happening here. What kind of person is this? This is the greatest logician in all of India. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was a scholar, very, very sober person. And he studied the Nyaya of India. He was a student, a master of the Nava Nyaya, the new Nyaya. It's very heady stuff. Super heady stuff. It's dry. These were people, this culture was not, Aboriginal, native, tribal people, like some of the British thought that needed to be civilized, and so forth. They had math. They had their altars from way back in the Rig Veda, so they knew the square root of the hypotenuse or whatever, I don't know, pi, which was necessary to build their altar or so forth. These were this is the cradle of civilization. And some very rich insights have come from there, and handed down carefully and continue to be explained over time and exemplified it here. Caitanya is such an extraordinary example of that. An example speaks louder than precepts. So all the books are superseded by his own example, such that the Goswamis thought, if you don't think his religion is coming from the books, you got to be wrong, because he is the very embodiment of what the heart of religious experience is about. So we got to find him in the books. It's got to be there, or you can throw the books out. I mean, this is what you want. So of course they located him there, and they found the verses. They did the academic work of locating him on the map and so forth. So such an extraordinary example in human history amongst the many mystics, and they're all extraordinary in their own way. Caitanya Mahaprabhu is unique in a measure to which he speaks about the nature of transcendence, the possibilities that lie there, and in his own personal character, moral character, humanness, if you will, in his ecstasy. There is no example like this in the history of the world, religious or secular, this kind of happy joy. Actually, this is the Mahabhav. This is the happiest person in the world. This, Radha, if you will. So we got off a bit here without going through the text, but he says, we read one, but Nam Vinu Kodikali Nahi Ardharma Sarvamanto Sar Nam E Shastraman. So I explained that. Itavari ek shloka Shikaya More Kante Kori Esh Shlok Kori Vichar. He says, and then Itavari ek shloka Shikaya More. My guru gave me this instruction: keep this verse in your kanta, in your throat. Means always remember this verse, chant this verse. And he cites the famous verse from Brihad Naradiya Purana to the Prakashananda Saraswati, the big scholar of the Vedanta. It's Kali Yuga. You didn't get this one? Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam. Kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva. So, no other way, no other way, no other way. Harinam, Harinam, Harinam. And of course, I've already explained. You got to appreciate it in our pluralistic times. So understand what is Krishna Nam, how inclusive Krishna Nam is. And the other ways, of course, that are being spoken about here are the Dharma Marg, or the Karma Marg, the Gyan Marg, the Yoga Marg, basically, which really sum up the essence of all transcendental paths. It's, of course, Sanskrit, Hindu terminology, but you can look at the Jesus, and the Rumi, this one and that one, and they're either doing yoga, the Desert Fathers, Gyan, or they're doing, of course, karma is a non-transcendental, but a religious orientation. These are terms that are also, again, inclusive. I mean, they're very comprehensive terms. Karma marg, the path of the religious orientational life in which the improvement of material life, which is the realm of karma, is the aim. I mean, that's pretty much sums up the religious orientation of life, regardless of what religion you're involved in. You're on the karma marg. And then there's the Gyan marg. You have your mystics, introspection, and you're moving away. The Buddha's on the Gyan marg. He's moving away from interaction with sense objects because he understands the thirst for them is the cause of misery. The Trishna, the thirst is the cause of dukkha, the suffering. This is again Gyan marg. So, and Yoga marg is there, more system of bodily exercises and deprivations of sleep, austerity, things like this. These are the basic approaches, and they have, 3 of them, a kind of non-material effect. Of course, then I would say bhakti, and then there's bhakti. And the Jesus has kind of a bhakti approach. I'm not an expert on all the different paths, but there are transcendentalists cross-culturally, and these are basically what they're doing. This is just a way of saying, again, this Hinduism is it's the mother of religion. The more authentic your religious orientation gets, the more it starts to look like Hinduism. It starts to promote nonviolence. It considers maybe there's another life. It promotes a relationship with nature that is sustainable and not exploitive. That's Hinduism. So, the mother of religion, and that's literally true. And such religious diversity within it, very rich. So anyway, here he says the Harinam verse is only by chanting, holding, not by dharma, not by karma, but not including karma because it's not a transcendental path, but not by I guess it is not by karma, not by dhyan, not by yoga, but chanting name of God means, of course, this is a limb of bhakti. Kirtan is not a limb of the Gyan Marg. It's not an anga of the Yoga Marg, and it's not an anga of the, well, it might be an anga of the Karma Marg with different something else in mind. Chant for this or that, but it's not spoken of in that way. It's a limb. Yoga has its limbs, what it considers yama niyam and so forth. And the Gyan Marg has its limbs, Vivek and Vairagya, with the cultivation of these, and 6 qualities. It's a whole sophisticated path. Kirtan is not part of that. So Kirtan here means this is the Bhakti Marg, and the Kirtan of Krishna Nam. And Krishna, as I have to say, he's the one that says that Kirtan corresponds with me, and even more so than what it does with Narayan or any other form of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. In the Gita, Krishna says, Satatam Kirtayam Tomam. Describes the qualities of my devotees. They're always doing kirtan about me. We don't hear Shiva say, so, just chant my name and I'll be there. No. You don't hear Durga or Ganesh saying that. Buddha's not saying that. Narayan may say it to some extent, but it's very prominent in relation to Krishna Bhakti. Krishna himself says it. My devotees are always chanting about me, always doing kirtan. And Prabhupada was asked by Professor Stahl, what's this people you got, you're a Hindu and you got these American people out in the streets chanting mantras. This isn't Hinduism, this is corruption of Hinduism. And Prabhupada wrote back, Satatam Kirtayam, you're a scholar of Hinduism, have you read this verse from the Bhagavad Gita? Krishna says, my devotees are always chanting. They're doing kirtan. What's the problem? Right? You're a Hindu, you're an Indologist. You missed that verse. So, Bhakti Marg and Krishna Bhakti. And Agyapam Nam Loi Anukshan Nam Loite More Branta Hulaman. So since he goes on, I received these orders from Agya, I received this order, got the order from my guru to Loi Anukshan. Loi means to chant, to always repeatedly chant Krishna Nam, Nam Loite, more Branta Hulaman. The more I chant, the more I become crazy. I become Branta. I seem to go insane. This is my testimony, he says. This is what's happening to me. You asked why I do what I do? I'm giving you the answer. So, Darite Nari Huila Ummata. Hashi Kandi Nachigai Reiche. Madamata. While chanting the holy name, in ecstasy, then I lose myself in laughter and tears and dancing and singing, just like a madman. Tobi dori dhari mani karilun vichar Krishna name Gyan Chandra Hoila Amar. He says, collecting my patience now, therefore, or at that time, I began to consider, having followed my Guru's order and gotten these results, I collected my patience and I began to consider that maybe this chanting of Krishna Nam is problematic. Gyan Chana Hoila Amar. It seems like my Gyan is being Chana, covered. Indeed it is. Your path is the Gyan Shunya Bhakti. So he's also saying that the Gyan is superseded by, transcended by praying, by love. Your whole path is Gyan Marg. And when I took the orders of my spiritual master seriously and chanted Krishna Nam, this would happen to me. It seemed as if, when I collected myself, my knowledge was being covered by the chanting. He's implying there's something more than Gyan Marg. I became bewildered, like a crazy person. Pagal! Hoilan Ami. Doriya Nahimani. I became a pagal, like a crazy person, it seems. And so what did I do? And I got the results from chanting. I went and talked to my guru, and I told him, I'm having a problem. I took your advice, I followed, I chanted your mantra, and Krishna Nam, and Kiva mantra dila go sai, Kiva tarbo. Wow. Japite mantra, Gorila Pagal. He said, my dear master, what kind of mantra have you given me? I become mad by chanting this mantra. Hasya nachai morik koraya kandan dashuni guru hasi borila vachan. Chanting the holy name in ecstasy causes one to dance, to laugh, to cry. And when my Guru Maharaj heard that this happened to me, then Guru hasi borila vachan. My Guru smiled. Guru hasi, and then he began to speak to me. So hear what he said in the next session. Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Harinam Prabhu ki jai, Sri Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami Mahacharya ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi ki jai. Panchagalpatu Yascha Vasasi Chasha Anand Kuri Vishnu ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.
Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Swami Guru Maharaj ki jai. Is that hungry?